Okay, so tell me a little bit about yourself and how you got involved in the disability community.
So my name is Maya Chupkov, and I am the founder, host, producer, editor of Proud Stutter podcast. And I live in San Francisco. And I've had the podcast we launched a little over 2 years ago. So yeah, I've been doing it. It seems like I've been doing it way longer. And how I got involved in the disability community is really through launching the podcast. I had never really identified as someone with a disability because I thought my stutter was something negative and something to be ashamed of. And so I hid it for a long time, since I was little. And not until the podcast is when I really started to like be introspective about myself and how my stutter is part of my identity. And that's when I started asking some of those questions of like, is stuttering a disability? Am I part of the disability community? Am I disabled enough to associate with the disability community? And the more I thought about it and the more I really just, spoke with other people, the more I realized so much of my life been, I haven't had access to a lot of opportunities because of my stutter. So, in that sense, that's when I started owning and seeing myself as part of the disability community and wanting to get more involved.
hmm So tell me about the Proud Stutter podcast. How did you come up with that idea?
Yeah, like I said, I hid my stutter for a long time, would not ever talk about it. I kind of pretended that my stutter didn't exist, even though there were many days where I'd stutter a lot. But yeah, I just never really came to terms with it. But during the pandemic, I got a new job and I was super depressed because I didn't like my that job. I felt I was just so low, and I I just felt so exhausted because I don't know what the pandemic did, but between getting a new job and like living through that, my stutter was just so consistent, and it was just popping up more than it had in a really long time. And so I was just frustrated every day. And I got to such a low place. I was like, I need something that will help me wake up in the morning. And so I started thinking about what are some like creative ways I can kind of get out of this funk. And podcasting has always kind of been in the back of my mind because it's low barrier. You can, all you need is an internet connection and a microphone. And so I was like, okay, I'm just going to do a podcast. And my fiance is actually my fiance at the time, now husband. He gave me the idea of doing a podcast about stuttering because he's always been very curious about my stutter. And as soon as he said that, a light bulb went off, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to do this. And so, there's more to the story, but basically I was able to like really take my depression and put my energy into something that I actually enjoyed. And the more I started opening up about my stutter, the more I loved it. And it really was freeing for me. And so that's when I really felt like I could do a podcast about stuttering. So that's kind of the origin story.
hmm a lot of people don't know what a stutter is. Like for those who don't know much about the term or are curious about it, what is a stutter? What goes into that?
Yeah. So through having all of these interviews with people who stutter since launching the podcast, I've learned that stuttering comes in so many different forms, and there's not really one way to stutter. But I can talk about some of the types of stutters that I've encountered. So my own stutter, it's a mix of blocking. So sometimes I'm speaking and I'm trying to get a word out, but instead it's just silence. And so there's a lot of that silence and blocking going on usually in my stutter. And I also repeat consonants a lot too. And sometimes I repeat consonants at the beginning of a word and in the middle of words. So that's kind of how my stutter is. Other people's stutter, similar, like some people prolong their consonants like Maya or Maya or Maya. So it's just like, so those are, I think, the three most common types of stuttering. But so much of our stuttering is actually in people navigating around stuttering. So another part of the stuttering experience is filler words. So like, you know, those types of words, or, like I actually say, a lot because that's my way of of navigating around my stutter. So yeah, that's just a little flavor of what stuttering is.
Mm-hmm. You know, oftentimes when people speak in front of large crowds, like at an award ceremony or auction, they often get so tensed up and like stutter because I've heard people say I've got stage fright. I'm not very comfortable, talking into large crowds of people. So what I'm wondering is, is that common for a stutter? And is that common for a stutter? It's what I want to ask.
Yeah, I mean, for me, because I can only really speak to my own experience, I don't I don't stutter because I'm nervous. Like I think there are people that when they're nervous, they might stutter a little bit, but I think, um people who stutter, they stutter even without being nervous. So it's just kind of part of their their brain chemistry, I think. But I think what I can say is many people who stutter, including myself, when they're public speaking, the stuttering can come up um, more often because they're in a situation where they feel uncomfortable. So I think in a lot of situations where there's nerves involved, or you might be on a stage with a lot of people looking at you, or even in like a crowded room at a party, I think a lot of people who stutter can agree that the stuttering does tend to come up more and pop up more in those types of situations. So yeah, I think that's what I would say around people being nervous and stuttering versus a person who stutters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. So like my next question is like how do you sort of like minimize, a person's chances of stuttering? Although I could be wrong because stuttering it's just a natural sort of part of, how people's brain works. So like I was wondering if you could like answer that question.
Yeah, I mean, I think um what I would say about that is there are certain situations where it's easier for me to just hide my stutter. And so sometimes if I try really hard, I can hide my stutter, and but then I get so exhausted at the end of the day. And even there's certain nights where or days where I try really hard to not stutter and I still stutter. So there aren't really any techniques that really like fully get rid of my stutter. A lot of it has to do with how much sleep I got the night before, um, how my mental health is that day. Um, just there's so many factors that I think goes into my stutter that if I tried the same technique every day, it wouldn't help because there's just so many variables involved. But one of the things that I have started doing that really helps ease the pressure I put on myself with my speech is I've learned to, let's say I'm mid stutter and I'm talking to someone and I literally just can't get the word out or it's taking me a long time. I'll literally stop stuttering or I'll pause and I'll be like, "Hey, I can't get this word out. Can you help me?" And so that's helped kind of ease the pressure off of me and it's helped me kind of address the stutter in a way where it shows other people that it's just not a big deal. I'm just having a little trouble speaking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good to know. Like my last question is, what lessons or takeaways can people sort of learn from listening to your podcast? What do you want them to like learn, know, take away?
Yeah, I the biggest takeaway is that if you stutter and listen to the podcast, you are not alone. There are so many people who are emailing me and coming on the show telling their story. And so yeah, no, number one, you are not alone. If you stutter out there, there's a whole community out there that is ready to welcome you and embrace you. The second thing is for parents and people with loved ones who stutter, and even people who stutter themselves. Stuttering is not a bad thing. Yes, stuttering is frustrating. Like I get frustrated every day when all I want to do is just get my point across and I can't, and that's really frustrating. So I'm not downsized. I'm not trying to say like, oh, stuttering's great all the time, but stuttering has a lot of nuance. Yes, stuttering can be annoying, but stuttering is not a bad thing. It's just a different way of speaking. It's something that a lot of us can't control, and so the more we can just build that acceptance, the better we'll feel. And I know everyone who stutters is on their own journey around their stutter, and but whatever path you're on and wherever you're at, there's someone else that's on that path too. And yeah, so it's just it's okay to stutter, but it's also okay to be frustrated with your stutter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good to know. Yeah.